If you go to reformparty.uk, you will now see a live tracker for our membership number. You saw it was 100,000 members a couple of weeks ago. As of 5 o'clock Sunday, we'll track daily what our membership numbers are. You'll see in live time as they go up. The Conservative Party sent out 131,000 ballot papers for their recent leadership election. I reckon we're going to go through that pretty soon.
In a political shake-up no one saw coming, Nigel Farage has emerged as the UK's most liked party leader, leaving Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch in the dust. This isn't just a victory for Farage. It's a stinging indictment of the current political establishment. Farage's straight-talking, unapologetic style is striking a chord with voters fed up with the same old platitudes from Labour and the Conservatives. Reform UK's skyrocketing favourability ratings underscore a seismic shift in the political landscape, with Farage positioning himself not just as an alternative, but as the leader the nation has been waiting for. For Starmer and Badenoch, the message is clear. The public is no longer buying what they're selling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday we witnessed some extraordinary celebratory scenes outside Britain's prisons, where in some cases serious career criminals were released. And this to make way for, yes, rioters, but equally those who've said unpleasant things on Facebook and elsewhere on social media. Does the Prime Minister understand? There is a growing feeling of anger in this country that we are living through two-tier policing and a two-tier justice system.
I'm angry to be put in a position of having to release people who should be in prison because the last government broke the prison system. And the Prime Minister was repeatedly warned. He had his own release scheme. He was repeatedly warned that he had to adopt the scheme that we put in place. The former Justice Minister said if we don't do it, we'll have to get down on our knees and pray. The police chiefs made it absolutely clear in a letter to him before the election that he needed to take action, saying that they wouldn't be able to discharge their duties and saying the risk was loss of an ability to detain suspects. That means, Mr. Speaker, an inability to arrest people committing offences. That's how bad it was, and they warned the Leader of the Opposition that further delays until after the general election will increase the risk significantly. What did he do? He delayed and increased the risks.
Nigel Farage's blunt, unapologetic style has struck a chord with voters who feel alienated by the polished and detached rhetoric of leaders like Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch. Unlike his rivals, Farage speaks directly to concerns over sovereignty, immigration control, and free speech, issues that resonate deeply with those worried about Britain's national identity and cultural shifts. His crowning as the most liked political leader is more than a personal victory. It's a damning indictment of public frustration with the establishment's stale narratives. Reform UK's rising favourability is a testament to the vital role Farage plays in capturing this mood of discontent. Labour's long-standing appeal to working-class voters, especially in the north of England and industrial heartlands, has waned under Starmer's leadership. Many feel left behind by Labour's pivot to urban, middle-class, and progressive politics. Farage, with his unrelenting focus on sovereignty, immigration, and law and order, has stepped into the breach, offering a message that resonates with disillusioned Labour voters. Reform UK is carving out its space as the voice of the working class, championing concerns that Starmer seems unwilling or unable to address. Reform UK's approach is one of action, not word. By tackling immigration, economic reform, and personal freedoms head-on, the party has tapped into a growing sense of dissatisfaction with both Labour and the Conservatives. A savvy youth focused campaign and Farage's mastery of media have further propelled the party's appeal. As the Conservatives struggle with an aging voter base and Labour grapples with internal division, Reform UK is emerging as a viable alternative. Farage's appeal isn't limited to disenchanted Labour voters. Traditional Conservative voters, frustrated by Rishi Sunak's leadership and Kemi Badenoch's policy positions, are also flocking to Reform UK. Meanwhile, younger voters are responding to the party's focus on economic opportunity, housing, and the cost of living crisis. Reform UK's hardline stance on border control and immigration resonates with those who feel Starmer's approach lacks substance, while Farage's tough rhetoric on crime and justice strikes a chord with voters who see the current government as ineffective. The 2025 local elections will be a critical testing ground for Reform UK's ambitions. Success at the council level will bolster grassroots support and set the stage for national influence. As Farage continues to fill the void left by Labour's and the Conservatives' failures, Starmer's reluctance to take definitive stances on key issues is creating space for Reform UK to grow. Farage's relatable and direct communication style stands in stark contrast to Starmer's cautious, technocratic demeanor. This difference amplifies the perception that Labour is out of touch with ordinary Britain. With growing defections to Reform UK, Starmer risks losing credibility not just among voters but within his own party. Farage's rise is reshaping the political landscape, challenging the dominance of traditional parties and offering a powerful alternative to the status quo. Whether Reform UK can sustain its momentum and turn favourability into electoral success will depend on Farage's ability to maintain public trust, mobilise grassroots support, and present a coherent vision for governance. One thing is clear: Farage is no longer just an outsider. He's a political force to be reckoned with.
And the incoming presidency of Donald Trump's, given that the whole of his cabinet have been so rude about him over the last few years.
Well, I'm glad to see the honourable member making a rare appearance back here in Britain. He spent so much time in America recently. I was half expecting to see him on the immigration statistics when we see the next batch. But he may have missed. I did congratulate the incoming president last week.
Keir Starmer's dig at Nigel Farage for his rare appearance in the Commons is more than just a throwaway line. It's a clear indication that the Prime Minister is rattled by Farage's growing influence. Starmer's quip about Farage's time in the US may earn a few chuckles among his supporters, but it fundamentally misses the broader point. Farage's trips across the Atlantic are not distractions. They're deliberate and strategic, aimed at forging stronger ties with Donald Trump and the global populist movement. These connections align seamlessly with the frustrations and values of Reform UK's expanding voter base. Farage's international presence highlights his ability to transcend the parochial confines of Westminster. While Starmer focuses on delivering scripted barbs, Farage is actively building a global network, enhancing his credibility as a statesman. His engagements with figures like Trump showcase a leader who understands how global trends impact British voters, making him a formidable alternative for those tired of establishment politics. Starmer's attempt at humor may backfire. Rather than undermining Farage, it underscores his role as a serious contender with influence far beyond the Commons. Farage isn't merely challenging Labour at home. He's redefining what modern political leadership looks like in Britain. The voters who matter won't be swayed by Starmer's one-liners. Instead, they'll see a leader like Farage, unafraid to operate on the global stage, willing to take bold, decisive action to address the issues that resonate with them. If Starmer thinks mockery will neutralize Farage, he's sorely mistaken. Nigel Farage's 29 favourability rating is more than just a personal triumph. It's a watershed moment for Reform, a party that many once dismissed as a fringe movement. Farage's ability to eclipse established leaders like Ed Davey, Keir Starmer, and Kemi Badenoch speaks volumes about his resonance with a disenchanted electorate. His populist messaging, centered on immigration control, national sovereignty, and free speech, is cutting through the noise of establishment politics and finding a home with voters who feel ignored by the status quo. Farage is no longer just rallying the fringes. He's building a coalition of mainstream support. In stark contrast, Keir Starmer's leadership is floundering. With an unfavourability rating of 53, his worst since 2020, and a staggering 21-point drop in Labour's favourability over the past year, the cracks in Labour's foundation are widening. Starmer's failure to address core voter concerns such as immigration, the cost of living crisis, and rising crime has left his traditional working-class base vulnerable to Farage's advances. Labour now faces the stark reality that its disconnect with voters is fueling Reform UK's rise, and Starmer must either correct or risk ceding more ground to his insurgent rival. The prospect of a $100 million donation from Elon Musk could turbocharge Reform UK's ascent. A financial injection of this magnitude would transform the party's campaign capabilities, enabling nationwide advertising, grassroots mobilization, and a sophisticated digital outreach strategy. Musk's endorsement also lends Farage international credibility, aligning him with one of the world's most prominent advocates for free speech and disruption. Farage's meeting with Musk at Mar-a-Lago symbolizes more than just financial backing. It positions Reform UK as a player on the global stage, appealing to voters who admire leaders unafraid to challenge the establishment both at home and abroad. The implications for Britain's political landscape are profound. Both Labour and the Conservatives now face a serious challenge from Reform UK. The Tories are grappling with voter fatigue and internal divisions, while Labour's inability to retain its base creates fertile ground for Farage to attract defectors from both sides. With Musk's potential support and Farage's surging popularity, Reform UK is poised to make a significant impact in the 2025 local elections. Success there could solidify its status as a disruptive force capable of breaking the traditional two-party dominance. What we're witnessing is a seismic shift in voter priorities. Britons are increasingly drawn to parties that confront their frustrations head-on, rejecting the polished rhetoric and empty promises of the political establishment. Farage's rise is a reminder that, in a time of deep discontent, bold and unapologetic leadership can upend even the most entrenched political norms. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' soaring unfavorability rating of 47s, the highest she has ever recorded, is a scathing indictment of her contentious tax rate budget. This isn't just about one policy misstep. It's a reflection of deeper voter disillusionment with Labour's economic strategy. A chancellor's credibility is critical to public trust in a government, and Reeves' mounting unpopularity raises serious questions about Labour's ability to manage the economy. Her budget, which included national insurance hikes and a punishing 20% inheritance tax on farms and family businesses, has been widely condemned as anti-growth and overly burdensome on small business owners and rural communities. These measures feed into a damaging narrative. Labour is prioritizing revenue generation at the expense of economic vitality, alienating middle-income voters and entrepreneurs alike. Labour's broader performance is faring no better. A dismal 410 rating from voters and the fact that 58% believe the UK is heading in the wrong direction highlight a government struggling to meet expectations. These figures underscore growing dissatisfaction with Labour's governance and its inability to address key economic concerns. Discontent is creating fertile ground for political challenges like Nigel Farage's Reform UK, whose pro-business rhetoric and focus on economic reform offer voters a compelling alternative. Economic indicators further compound Labour's woe. Inflation is rising again, and the economy has contracted for 2 consecutive months, both of which will inevitably be pinned on Reeves and the government. Labour's tax-heavy approach appears to be exacerbating stagnation rather than delivering solutions. The result? A shattered business climate and a growing perception that Labour is hostile to economic growth. If this perception takes hold, the political consequences could extend far beyond the next election cycle. The stakes are immense. Reeves and Starmer must pivot quickly to address these economic concerns or risk losing their grip on key voter demographics. Small business owners, rural communities, and middle-income families, many of whom feel targeted by Reeves' budget, could become easy prey for Reform UK or a resurgent Conservative Party. Farage, in particular, is poised to capitalize on Labour's failures, leveraging his pro-growth agenda to attract disillusioned voters. Labour's internal challenges are just as significant. Reeves and Starmer face mounting pressure within their own party to rethink their economic approach. If they fail to deliver tangible solutions, they risk deepening internal divisions and further eroding public trust. This moment represents a critical juncture for Labour. Rachel Reeves' record, high unfavorability rating, coupled with the economic fallout of her tax rate budget, signals a crisis of confidence in Labour's leadership. Without decisive action, Labour risks ceding ground to challengers like Reform UK and undermining its own position as a viable governing party. The clock is ticking, and the political stakes couldn't be higher. Thanks for watching. Stay connected. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with our latest videos and stay ahead of the curve on the issues shaping our world. For even more, join our free Telegram group, link in the description, for uncensored, no-holds-barred discussions on the topics that matter most. Be part of the conversation. Your voice counts.